Welcome to episode 57 of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
I'm Nicholas Raba.
And I'm Nicholas Tacek.
Today we are tackling some of your questions. Nicholas and Nicholas try to cover everything they can in each topic we cover, but questions do still come up. In fact, here come some now. We're tackling passwords, the psychology of hacking, jailbreaking for security, and finally some thoughts on VPNs. Let's just dive straight into it, guys. This one goes all the way back to checklist number 8, which was our episode Password Do's and Don'ts. Colin has actually written in with 2 questions, and I'll read them both to you, and then we'll go back and tackle them separately. I was wondering whether Apple's keychain counts as a password app and how secure it is question number 1 for him. And number 2, if you want your mobile or cell phone unlocked so you can use other networks, is it necessary to give the company your mobile phone's password? So let's start with the first one. Apple's keychain, is it a password app and how secure is it? Before we even get to that, remind people what a password app is and why they might want to use one.
Well, a password app is something that can store your passwords. Usually the reason behind that is it's a very bad idea to reuse the same password across all of your different sites. You don't want to use the same password on your email account. You don't, and the same password on your banking account and the same password for iTunes. You don't want to do that because if any one of your services got hacked, the bad guys would then be able to reuse your password and log into all of your other accounts. The other problem that a lot of people encounter is creating a strong enough password, because machines are really good at going through repetitive tasks really quickly. It makes it really easy for the bad guys to try and brute force a password by having it try all the different combinations. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, with all the letters of the alphabet, all the numbers. So having a strong password in the first place can make the task of brute forcing your password take way too long for the bad guys to find it worthwhile. But unfortunately, people are really bad at coming up with good passwords. We always go for pets' names or birthdays or stuff like that. So a password management app will not only store all of your different passwords, a good one will also be able to help you generate a strong and secure password.
So then the question, whether Apple's keychain counts as a password app and wondering how secure that is. I know that my Mac will occasionally say, oh, you should try this password. And then it gives you 16 numbers or 16 letters or a combination of those two things with, hyphens in it and stuff like that. That seems strong. That seems secure. And yet I seem to remember you guys saying you might want to look for a third-party app. Talk to us about keychain specifically.
Keychain has actually gotten quite a bit better than it used to be. They now have they have a password generation component, which you did talk about just now. I don't think it's quite as customizable as some of the third-party options, but it can still generate very strong passwords. Beyond that, it does store all of your data securely on disk. You have a master password of sorts that will unlock your keychain. That's usually your account password for your Mac. You can change that, but generally you're just going to have the same password as your login password. And so once you unlock your keychain with your main password, then you can use the items in the keychain. When the keychain is locked, so when your computer is turned off or you're logged out of your account, that data is stored securely on your disk. So it does cover that. It's stored securely, and kind of in recent, I guess it's not quite so recent now that we've got iOS 11 having just been released, but in recent years with iOS, they've included a capability where Safari can automatically fill in passwords that are stored in your keychain. So it serves the same function that a lot of the third-party apps have had for years, where you can hit a simple key combination on your keyboard and it will autofill your password to log you into a website. So you don't even have to type in that super long, super complex password. So they have made quite a number of leaps and bounds recently, getting Keychain kind of up to steam in terms of what the competition has offered. So it definitely is a robust solution for users who are looking to securely store their passwords. It's integrated with iOS, with macOS, and it is free. It comes with iOS and with macOS, and it's just I guess the concern that some people have had with the way it works with the Safari autofill stuff is that it uses iCloud keychain. So it is storing your data in Apple's iCloud. We've covered before how iCloud does store its data securely on Apple servers, but some users and some listeners will still be concerned with the fact that it is being stored on essentially someone else's computer.
Yeah, that's something we get asked, whether or not to do keychain in the cloud to store that data there. And for a lot of people, third-party app like 1Password, being able to utilize the app across your different devices, across your phone and then your Mac, by using their stored cloud passwords, that was definitely a benefit there.
It's still, I mean, yeah, it's the choice where you can use one provider or another's cloud integration, be it iCloud or a different third-party integration. A lot of password managers do have the capability to have essentially what's an offline database of your passwords, where it's only stored locally on the machine. The downside there is that you would have to be making sure that if you want your different devices to work, you have to make sure that those databases kind of stay in sync with each other without using something automatic like iCloud Sync. So that's going to require a bit more work on the part of the user to keep them up to date if you change passwords or add new login information. But it does offer the possibility then of having essentially offline storage of your passwords where you're not worrying about them being stored on someone else's servers, but you are going to lose some convenience there.
Is that for the ultra paranoid, or is that for the InfoSec people? I mean, who is that for?
It's really, it comes down to a personal choice. I know plenty of InfoSec people who are essentially just trusting in their particular cloud service provider's network and their own security. I've also seen a number who are, not necessarily paranoid, but just I guess it's a difference between being paranoid and being aware that there are security flaws, and they're just not wanting to take that risk. If you're the type of person who's got a real big target painted on their back in terms of hackers or bad guys going after your data, you might want to be taking more of those steps to be making sure that you're not putting extra stuff in something like iCloud or a different cloud service provider where somebody could social engineer their way into your account, or if there was some sort of major security flaw. But the number of people in the world who are really going to meet that criteria, it's not going to be happening to you if you're a typical everyday user. It's really, you'll know. It's like you'll know it if you need to,
right,
if you need to be offline. But for most listeners and for most people, as long as you're using a reputable service provider, so if you trust Apple for most everything, you trust Apple's iCloud.
It's not that you're not important. It's just that you're not that important.
But then what happens when you're using one of these services? I mean, we've heard of like LastPass and other companies in the news. What happens if you just become part of whatever latest hack happens on their service?
And that is the concern when you have not necessarily being targeted as an individual, but where an entire service has been targeted with some sort of zero-day exploit, or they've had some bad security or whatever, and their entire infrastructure is compromised. And yeah, that's it happens. It's the reality of the world we live in now. It's kind of more concerning when you're talking about something like a password database that's being stored online and having that online service provider being compromised. And that's when you really hope and trust. And this is a time you can actually do your research ahead of time. A lot of these password app providers will tell you the kind of security they have for your data on their servers. So you're going to hope that it's not being stored in plain text on their servers, or if the bad guy gets past one level of security, they've got everything. You'd want a provider that has all that data stored encrypted on their servers, that they don't have access to it. Essentially, the highest level of security they can provide, and a lot of them do provide that. And that can be, there are times when you'll see a data breach in the news where they'll say, yes, our servers were hacked, but the user data was stored in this secure manner with this, security protecting it, this level of encryption and so on. And from there, the security people can usually offer advice on as to, okay, do you need to worry a lot, or do you need to worry a little bit, or do you not need to worry at all? And that is, it's kind of on a case-by-case basis because every provider will do things differently. But some of the good providers will tell you the level of security they're offering to your data on their servers. So that might be something to look into if you're trying to decide between different providers.
Turning it to a real-world thing, I mean, just like a physical example. My dad has a safe, and you can pick up that safe and move it from place to place because we have. Right? But I mean, the cool thing about having a safe is, if somebody happens to wander into your house, at the very least, they're not going to be able to quickly get in there and take that thing. It adds a level of complexity that, first of all, there's a lock on it. And second, it's heavy as all get out. I mean, so we're kind of talking about the same thing, right? I mean, maybe your password security thing is not 100,000% safe, but it's certainly safer than, leaving your password, which is the name of your cat, taped to a sticky on your computer.
Very true. And might I start by recommending safes generally come with bolts, and you could bolt them down pretty darn good for the medium to larger safes. That would stop somebody from just walking off with it.
Well, now you're okay. Here's what I'm saying though: it's so heavy, nobody is just going to walk off with it, but they can. But now you're adding levels of complexity to our levels of complexity.
Well, that's actually in the encryption world, that's kind of a measure of how strong an encryption algorithm is you say, with current computing technology, if you throw this much computing power at this set of encrypted passwords or encrypted data, how many years will it take in order to brute force your way into that specific password? And when you start measuring it in terms of years or tens of years or hundreds of years, we know that computing power kind of goes up exponentially. So when you start getting to the higher levels of encryption and strong encryption, it becomes what is currently infeasible with our current technology and with the assumed progress of technology in the next 5 years, 10 years. And eventually some technology will make things faster, or vulnerability found, but that is how we measure it. So it's kind of thinking like, you've got this heavy safe. So encryption, you've got a strong algorithm. Those things are going to make it harder for the bad guys to get in any sort of timely fashion. You hope that the alarm company sends the police early enough, if your house alarm's going off, or if online their server alarms are going off, when bad guys are in the system. It's kind of the same analogy there, that you just want to slow down the bad guys until you can take steps to boot them.
I feel like I oversimplified Colin's second question, so we'll go a bit deeper. If you want your mobile or cell phone unlocked so you can use other networks, is it necessary to give the company your mobile phone's password? A friend recently had their phone unlocked by a high street shop, so just a shop for people who live here in the States, and they asked for my friend's password for their mobile. So if I'm understanding him correctly, it's just, when he was going from, here, well, I guess I could use UK cell providers. If he's going from Virgin to EE, apparently the company that was unlocking his phone for him said, okay, I need your password to get into that. I'm thinking about, like, when I've gone to Apple before and needed them to do something, they will hand me back my phone and say, will you please put in your password? And they look away because they need me to unlock my phone so that they can get in to, look at the thing or run the diagnostic or whatever. Is this as simple as, yes, they're going to need your phone to be unlocked, but you don't need to give your password. You need to unlock your phone and hand it back to them.
Exactly. And when I was kind of thinking about this question, it's really true. Apple's really good about that, saying we don't want to know anything we don't need to. We don't need to know your unlock code, so just unlock your phone for us. In this case, it sounds like maybe the shop that the person went to didn't really care as much, and they just were like, oh yeah, we'll write down your passcode. Then when we eventually get to your phone in our workload, we'll be able to unlock it. There are options there. Like, yes, your phone will need to be unlocked in the sense that you can access your home screen. That's different than unlocking the carrier provider. It's unfortunately very similar terminology, but it means totally different things. Unlocking your carrier means that you could, as you said, Ken, switch to a different provider. Phones used to be locked down to a specific provider. You could not use your AT&T phone on a Verizon network, and that's changed a lot in recent years, but you still generally do have to take the step of unlocking the phone. One option is just to call your carrier directly and request an unlock. And not every carrier will be okay with doing that. They're supposed to for the most part, but you can do that on the phone, like call them on the phone and say, here, you've got my billing information. You know, give them whatever password you have on your account with the provider, and they can, on their system, unlock your phone. And that's Apple's actual recommendation in the first place, is just call your carrier first. There are third-party unlock services. They will need to be able to access your phone to get some of that data they need to unlock the carrier. But you could either unlock your phone with the passcode itself before you hand it to them. You could turn off the passcode before you give it to them and then turn it back on once they've done their thing. You could change your passcode after you've given them one, just in case. They're going to have access physically to your phone while they're doing it. So because of that, we'd recommend going with a reputable provider for that unlock. So either call your actual cell phone carrier or Apple or whoever you need to take it to. Taking it to some random store on the street, it could be a little shady, but
this shop didn't even have to be random. They could have just had like a large queue, or maybe the guy was on lunch, or unless you're doing it right then and there.
They'll still need access either way. So yeah,
exactly. So removing your passcode for it, or whatever the case may be. But then if you're actually going to leave your phone with somebody, you want to think about what's stored on your phone and what sensitive information, or if you have shared notes or passwords or anything else on there like that you're willing to leave your phone without any visuals on it.
And that's one of those situations where the phone, it doesn't matter. Your own data on the phone isn't going to affect whether or not this carrier unlock works. That's hardware in the end. It's unlocking your SIM card to work, or your phone to work with different carriers, different SIM cards. So you could technically, if you were really kind of paranoid, and it's not actually a bad idea, if you were going to one of these kind of third-party stores and you didn't necessarily trust them, make a backup of your phone, either locally on your computer or an iCloud, and then wipe your phone. Give them the phone that doesn't have any of your data, doesn't have any access to your email or your photos or anything like that. They can do the unlock, and then you can just restore from backup. Your phone will still be unlocked with your provider, but they won't have had access to your data. And that's actually really not a bad idea.
Nope, that's our final answer.
Pretty much.
All right, well, then let's move on to another question. Kevin wrote in with one that's, it's not one that we can actually answer definitively. And when I say we, I mean you. It's not one that can be answered definitively, I don't think, but it's interesting. I'd be interested in knowing something about the psychology of hacking. For example, in your experience, what makes one person become a black hat hacker while another goes the white hat route? Do you know people who started out black hat and changed over to white hat? Is it always simple greed that makes one go black hat, or are there other motivations in play for both sides? So asks Kevin. I actually kind of wanted to stay away from this question, except he did say in your personal experience. So I'm not asking about what you guys do or what you guys have done in the past, but just talk to me generally. Why do people go white hat versus black hat and vice versa?
It's situational is the way to kind of start things out. It depends to an extent where the person's at in their life, how old they are, lots of things like that. If you have somebody who's a kid who's looking to get into computer security or the hacking side of things, a lot of times they'll be doing black hat type stuff to impress their friends or the group of people they hang out with online, to access people's emails, their friends' emails, like as a joke or for more nefarious purposes. And that can kind of be more of a, I guess, seen as like a kids being kids type thing to an extent. A lot of times you'll see those same people, if that interest in security is stronger when they're younger, and they don't get themselves sent to jail for years and years and years because of their actions. A lot of times you'll see them as they grow up and mature to turn more to the white hat side of things. Like, let's do this as a job. Another thing that's kind of changed the way that works these days is the prevalence these days of bug bounty programs. It is a way for large companies to essentially solicit hackers to try and break their systems with the promise of a payout if they can prove a successful hack and the company can fix it. And there's a lot of rules involved there. Like, you have to give us all the information on this, how you did it. Promise not to do it on systems that we don't tell you to do it on. They usually have set up test systems, or say you have to do it on your own account. And so as long as somebody follows the rules, they can actually get a fairly sizable payout from these companies, because it's way cheaper for a company to pay a bug bounty than it is to deal with a massive security incident and all the fallout that comes from that. And those didn't exist really until maybe the past decade. They started kind of growing. Before that, if you tried reporting a security flaw to a company, it was just as good of a chance that they were going to say, "Oh, thank you so much," and fix it, as they were going to report you to the FBI and try and get you arrested. And the attitudes really changed in terms of the corporations, as they saw that it was a lot better to basically make a special program for these people to try and hack their systems and then fix them, versus not having any idea that they had these flaws until it's too late. And then you'll have people who are in it for the greed side of things. They don't have a job that's paying them a lot of money, and they have some technical skills, and they realize, oh, hey, I could be making a lot more money if I was doing bad guy stuff with my computer knowledge. And that really, again, it's kind of it depends on the person. Some people would want to be doing black hat hacking stuff, even if they had the option of being paid decently as a security consultant. And that does, it comes down to the psychology side of things. And I don't think there's any real way of quantifying that on a general level.
Right.
But times have changed. I mean, the resources that are out there now from when we were growing up, when we first started playing with computer security, or when we first started hacking, we were reading different guides. We were talking to different people. I mean, now you have books, you have classes, you have all these tutorials on computer security in general, whereas years ago, the security guides were being written by the same people who were hacking the stuff. I mean, now you have whole courses set up in getting your degree in computer security. It changes.
I actually think when I first started college, I don't actually know that there were any computer security courses even offered. I mean, maybe there was something like master's level at the time, but I don't recall there being anything geared towards that at all. And you'll even see, I mean, if Kevin asked, do we know any people who started up Black Hat and changed? You can look at a lot of the major contributors to the computer security field, the professionals these days who started out as Black Hats. You have Kevin Mitnick, who did a lot of Black Hat stuff and eventually got arrested, spent some time in jail, and came out, and now he is a major security consultant known worldwide. Kevin Paulson was a Black Hat hacker, got in trouble, did his time, and is, I believe, a well-known security researcher and author now. And you'll see it a lot of times for people who are a little bit older. For our listeners, Frank Abagnale, Leonardo DiCaprio did the Catch Me If You Can movie a number of years back based on his life, where he started out doing social engineering stuff, Black Hat, flew all over the world, pretended to be a doctor, pretended to be a pilot, all sorts of crazy stuff, got in trouble, paid his dues, and now is a successful security consultant. So I think, again, it would depend on the person, because there are plenty of Black Hat people who, get in trouble and go to jail, or get in trouble and never redeem themselves. I think that is really, again, not something that's really easy to quantify one way or the other, but things have definitely changed in that security and security research is now much more acceptable and kind of mainstream than it used to be. So yeah, you'll have more opportunities, I think, for people who are interested in computer security to start out with white hat hacking, or at least gray hat hacking, rather than having to start at black hat side of things and eventually possibly move to the white hat side of things.
Continuing too with the whole color analogy, I mean, there are shades of gray, right? I mean, I don't think that we would think that what Captain Crunch and what what Woz did would be Black Hat, because all they were doing was playing around with the phone system. I feel fairly certain the phone companies would actually have considered them Black Hat, and yet, now we have Apple because these guys were playing around with something, that was really more of a lark than anything else for them at the time, right?
Exactly. And that's another thing I guess that's kind of changed, is the whole hacker culture has changed to an extent as well. A lot of times back when it started out, you'd have people who were hacking and doing stuff that, yes, the companies would probably consider Black Hat, the hackers considered Gray Hat. They were exploring. They wanted to learn more about the system. They wanted to get more knowledge. They wanted to share that knowledge. Right. And now, nowadays, if you want to learn something new, there are so many more resources. There's so many more places to start. And I think that's definitely shows how much computers have kind of changed our lives and how much more integrated they are, in that all these different sources of knowledge now are out there for anybody who wants to learn, versus back in the day when it was a lot of the learning was trial and error based. You had to kind of learn on your own. There weren't all these different groups and organizations that you could join to kind of pool knowledge, as it were.
So do you think to be a excellent security expert, you need to be a excellent hacker yourself?
I think you definitely need to understand how systems work from looking at them like a hacker would. That's always been the way it is with security, is you take a look at something and you say, okay, how could this security measure be circumvented or broken, or what flaws might exist in it? Because if you're not looking at, especially even as a software developer or anything like that, if you're not looking at your own system as the potential holes that are in it, you're not doing your due diligence as far as creating a robust, as secure as you can type application. It's definitely a different way of looking at things, and you can usually see who is interested in computer security by, people who say, hey, this new system looks cool, but hey, couldn't you get around it this way? And that's ties again into a lot of those bug bounty programs these days, where it'll just take somebody looking at something with a critical security eye and going, hey, wait a minute. And
what about this?
Exactly.
Yep.
We've talked about jailbreaking a time or two on this show. We got an email from Stefan or Stefan, and I apologize. I'm not sure. I think it's Stefan, but forgive me, and hopefully you know who I'm talking about when I'm talking about you. In a recent episode, you talked about jailbreaking and its risks and benefits. My understanding is that when you are browsing the web with an iOS device, you are susceptible to all the methods of user tracking that companies have devised, with the exception of getting malware through ads by using an ad blocker, maybe. The main reason I jailbroke my iOS device was to be able to install an outbound firewall comparable to Little Snitch and be able to control which apps phone home or track me through various services like Google Analytics or Google Safe Browsing without my consent. If you have any suggestions how to achieve safe browsing on iOS comparable to using a Tor browser and or specifically hardened Firefox and or an outbound firewall like on macOS without resorting to a jailbreak, it would be great if you could share them on the podcast. This is the first time I've ever heard the idea of jailbreaking as a security feature mentioned. Talk to me about what his question brings up.
It's not a good idea. It's really not.
For majority of the people, I mean, vast majority of the people.
when you're, to remind our listeners, when you're jailbreaking your phone in the first place, you are exploiting a security flaw in iOS in order to install software that Apple wouldn't normally allow on the device, to do things on the device that Apple wouldn't normally condone. And that's not a good idea. Apple, with each update to iOS, they're kind of playing a cat and mouse game with the jailbreakers. And they will lock down those holes that the jailbreakers have found. And usually, a lot of times you'll see that a jailbreak, the version of iOS that a jailbreak will work on is usually a couple versions behind, or point releases, not necessarily major releases, but they won't always work on the latest and greatest because Apple has locked down a lot of those holes. So if you jailbreak your device and you want to install the next update from Apple, it's usually going to unjailbreak your device. So to stay jailbroken, you need to essentially be not installing the security patches and updates from Apple. And because Apple's not including just the jailbreak security patches, they're including other security patches that really could affect the safety of your device. You're missing out on those, and that's not a good idea. Now, as far as the aspect of stopping stuff that's tracking you goes, it's a little more complex. You can take some steps, like with Safari content blockers. Those you can actually basically harden your phone to block certain types of data. It can help stop tracking, usually highly configurable. There is a special version of Firefox for iOS that is essentially a security conscious version that will implement a lot of those things that stop companies from tracking you. As far as apps themselves go, that's kind of it's a little bit trickier. Like we saw with on a recent episode, we just talked about AccuWeather with some of the tracking they were doing, GPS location data. You're relying on, I guess, word of mouth to an extent. You're relying on keeping an eye on the news for security, watching stuff like that crops up. There is a security service actually offered by the same guy, Will Strafish, who discovered the AccuWeather GPS tracking stuff. And I believe that is, I think it's out of beta now. It's Verifyly. And they analyze iOS apps and they kind of see what data are being sent to the servers, and they'll do security alerts on like, hey, this banking app is actually sending all of your data plain text. And so for people who are interested, that might be a service to look into or to follow to kind of see the reports generated by the apps they want to use, because that would let you know to an extent whether or not those apps were kind of tracking your usage. And then you'd have to choose essentially not to use that app. So yeah, there's not really a way to have an outbound firewall like Little Snitch without jailbreaking your iPhone, just because the way iOS security works, where it stops different apps from messing around with different apps and seeing what they're doing. And that is a security feature of iOS. It's one of those situations where if you want to have the actual security, you don't want to be jailbreaking your phone in the first place. And it would require the extra steps to be taken, like installing a Safari content blocker to kind of block some of the tracking data, and then keeping very careful track of what apps you do choose to use and avoiding those that are known to be kind of not taking your privacy very seriously.
There is one other thing to consider as well, and I know this is not the same level. I know this is not the same level that Stefan was talking about, or Stefan, and again, I apologize. There are 3 different search engines that you can set in iOS. One of them is DuckDuckGo, and it does not track the same way that Google does. And obviously, this does not cover all of the other stuff that you were talking about, but it was just one of the things that leapt to mind. I mean, there are little things that Apple does to not only try to anonymize or to not have your data like itself, but then it also gives options. So, okay, you're not comfortable with the amount of data that Google is scraping off of every single thing you search. Here's DuckDuckGo. Now, the drag on that is it forgets everything, but the good news is it forgets everything, at least as far as we know. So again, I mean, there are things they're doing. I mean, it's at some point, and I know we've talked about this before, you just kind of have to trust. And if you don't trust Google, okay, well, there are these other options, a lot of which Nick was just talking about as well.
And then added in iOS 11 in Safari is the ability to prevent cross-site tracking as well. That's a new feature in there. It's enabled by default. So I remember seeing an email, because we advertise on Google AdWords network. So we see the emails that come through, and there's a little bit of notice basically saying the way that we start, or the way that tracking is going to happen on Apple devices is going to be different. So basically some tips how to do better tracking and analytics and what you're working with there. But that email came out from Google because of this new feature in there.
Yeah. We should do a show on that sometime. I'm sorry. I was actually amused at, well, whatever. That's another show for another time, and we have a show that we're doing right now. Our last question, actually, was less a question and more a few comments just about VPNs. I've listened to your checklist on VPNs. It's a great introduction to the topic. It was good to see you address the difference between privacy and anonymity, which does seem to escape a lot of people. One of the things he's talking about is actually particularly interesting to me. It was something to do with Netflix because we had talked, and I can't remember which episode that was, I apologize, but we had talked about the fact that, I'm in England, I have a Netflix account in the US, I want to watch my stuff in the US, or, Hulu or something else. I can use a VPN and make it look like, even though I'm in England, that I'm actually in Chicago, and so I can go ahead and access all my content. Apparently Netflix has actually found a way to sort of crack down on that now.
Yeah, they it's not just Netflix. Hulu and a lot of the other ones will, based on IP addresses that are used by the VPN providers, they'll kind of blacklist them, so it won't let you access your American Netflix account from a foreign country, vice versa. And this listener actually wrote in, they do have a website where they do a comparison list of which VPN service providers worked with Netflix still. And so you could kind of get around that. And the list is a little bit out of date, so it might change. Might have changed even by now. And we'll include the link in the write-up for this. But basically, it's for those users who really want to get their American Netflix binge in when they're traveling or vice versa. And so again, it's not necessarily we've discussed before using a VPN with online video providers could result in a pretty bad viewing experience just because it's going to be extra slow. But that is just something to keep in mind for those listeners who are interested in that.
I do have another VPN question, by the way, and this is for me personally. When I go to Starbucks, I use a VPN, but I don't know exactly. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Basically, I don't know. Like, when do I turn my VPN on? Like, do I have it running before I get to the Starbucks, and then will it go ahead and let me access and all that stuff beforehand? Probably you're just going to tell me I shouldn't even be computing at a Starbucks, which I understand. But I mean, if we're going to use a public Wi-Fi hotspot, what are the steps? Do I click the I agree thing and then quickly turn on the VPN? Do I have the VPN running before I turn it on? Will that not stop me from getting to the information that I want? Help me out, because we've talked about, yes, you should use a VPN when you're out in public, but how do you actually use the VPN when you're out in public?
So generally when you have the portal pages where you have to agree, you can't start your VPN software till after that, because basically you have to first get past their portal page. But then once you're past that, then you would fire up your VPN software or start your VPN connection. One thing to keep in mind, though, is a lot of apps on your computer, on your phone, when they realize you have an active internet connection, they're going to try to connect right away. So they're going to try to authenticate. So it's one of those, probably quit your apps first that auto-connect, like your mail client or your chat program or whatever it is, and make sure that you have your connection secured over your VPN, and then launch those apps. Because otherwise, they're automatically going to start trying to connect.
Exactly, and on iOS, what you'd want to do would be actually quitting those apps. You double tap the home button, swipe up to exit the app before you're even trying to connect to that Wi-Fi network. If you're on a laptop, it's a little different because there are some apps and services that will run in the background invisibly that you don't see. It doesn't your dock might look like you're not running anything besides Finder. So that's a little more tricky. That can be where something like an outbound firewall, where you're automatically blocking connections, can come in handy and tell you're ready on the with the VPN. But it's just essentially something to be aware of, is that, you don't want your apps to say, oh, hey, it's an internet connection, and start trying to download your mail before you're actually up and running with your secure connection.
The other thing to keep in mind, and this is something to keep in mind while traveling abroad or roaming charges as well, is the phones do a lot of pushing. So your email will get pushed or downloaded even without clicking on the mail app. So you could change those into settings for each of the programs, whether or not you want that functionality enabled.
I have one other VPN question, and I'm always, well, here's what I'll say in my own defense. I know that I don't know, and I'm hoping to find out, so I'll go ahead and ask. I don't actually use the Wi-Fi at a Starbucks on my iOS devices. I do on my Mac because I'm sitting there doing work, but I don't on my iOS devices. I rely on my carrier because I've always got a good signal. Now, part of that too is I'm still grandfathered in with the, unlimited from forever ago, which means I haven't looked at my, how much less I could be paying. But I mean, I don't tend to worry about the amount of data that I'm using. And so I don't use anybody else's Wi-Fi. I mean, unless I'm at a friend's house or something like that. I don't use Wi-Fi publicly on an iOS device. That keeps me secure. That does not keep me secure. I mean, do I still need to be thinking about something else like a VPN or something like that, even if all I'm using is my carrier's network?
That's if you're trusting your carrier for the most part anyway, when you're at home or on the road. So yeah, trusting your carrier is fine. You don't need that extra step of VPN when you're using your carrier's network because we assume you trust your carrier. If you were,
which you may not, but I mean, they're your carrier. And so there's really very little you can do, generally speaking.
Exactly. And as we've discussed in previous episodes, if you are using a VPN service, you're then trusting your VPN provider because they're seeing all your data. So it's who do you trust is what it comes down to. Obviously, you don't necessarily want to trust that random public Wi-Fi network. You would hopefully trust your carrier more than that. If you trust your VPN provider more than your carrier, okay, go for that. But for the most part, your carriers can be perfectly fine, and that is a very safe way to do things.
Wait, you're not going to bring up the part about the rogue cell phone towers and trusting?
That's beyond the scope of this episode, I think.
Oh, man. Yeah. We'll talk about stingrays sometime. You want to talk about stingrays sometime, or would you rather not?
Sometime.
I'd rather forget they exist personally, but I guess we should hit that at some point. But today is not that day because we've kind of reached the end for today. Show notes for this show, like all of our shows, can be found in one convenient location. That is securemac.com/checklist. The address again is securemac.com/checklist. If you have a question of your own, I mean, I know that probably the guys have actually already addressed these questions, but here's the thing. If you have a question, chances are somebody else would benefit from the answer as well. So we would love to get these questions and then share the questions with other people because that gives us a chance to share the answers. The address to do that is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.